is Stella's Mezza. On today's episode, I'm going to be making something that I like to make almost every weekend actually. It is brunch. And for brunch today, we'll have a quiche with peppers and sausage, turkey sausage, and we'll also have apple turnovers, one of my favorites, kind of breakfast dessert, if you will. And I'll let you know exactly what you need. If you look down here, I'll start. All right, now you have the option to use either bacon, like thick cut bacon, or you can use sausage crumbles. And over here, or you can use ham. Over here I have turkey sausage crumbles. These are already cooked, fully cooked. And then I'm going to use some cheese. You can use Gruyere cheese, which melts very well, or for this particular recipe I'm going to be using Swiss cheese. And you will need some chives. I got mine bottled because it's just easier for me that way. You'll need some salt, you need a little bit of sugar, you need some pepper, and you'll need some basil. Okay, basil leaves, and I got in this package. I'm going to use a whole pack, and that's it right there. I just went ahead and thinly cut it into like ribbon, almost ribbon-like shape, just nice and skinny. And you're going to need some peppers. I'm using peppers for this recipe. You have the option to use any kind of vegetable you like. You can use spinach, you can use broccoli, but in this instance I'm going to use peppers because my son does not like broccoli, so he's going to be eating this. So I'm using yellow peppers, sweet peppers, and I'm using red peppers. And you can also use green peppers. I just use that for the crunch and also the color. It makes it the quiche nice and bright. And you'll also need some pie crust. Now you have the option to use your own homemade pie crust, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to use store-bought pie crust, which is what I have here. Okay, what I did is I went ahead and let it sit out on the counter for 20 minutes. Okay, and I rolled it out, and I'm ready to put it on my pie pan. Now I have here a 9-inch glass pie plate that I'm going to use. Now you can also use a tart pan, which releases from the bottom, but I find that the glass pie pan cooks it more evenly. The temperature in the oven, it works best for me, so that's what I'm going to use. So what I'm going to do, oh, and you also need some heavy cream, heavy whipping cream. Now, just for all the exact ingredients I'm using in this recipe and the exact measurements, please check out my blog. It's www.stellasmezza.blogspot.com. So we're going to start right away. You remember you have your 9-inch glass baking dish or your quiche pan. If you want to use that, the metal one, I'm going to start by quartering this. Makes it easier to transfer into the pie plate. So go ahead and fold it in two, and then like that. And then I'm going to take my pie plate. I'm going to kind of sit it a little bit off the edge, and I'm going to unfold it in the plate. Okay, and you want to unthaw this on the counter just to give it enough time to get nice, soft, and manageable, easier to work with. And what I do is I just kind of lightly press at the bottom edge to get it to sit flush with the edge on there. And then you see there's going to be excess pie crust around the edges. So what I do is I kind of just fold it underneath. Okay, just go around the plate and fold it underneath. What I'm going to do when I'm done folding it underneath is kind of crimp it with my fingers. You can do that. Some people cut it off completely, but I'd rather crimp it. And if it doesn't fold, like if you don't have excess, just leave it the way it is. You're going to crimp. You can crimp it still anyway. Okay. And just to let you know, my oven is preheating at 375 degrees. And that's a temperature which will cook this, and it's going to last for around 45 minutes. Now after you've tucked under the excess pie crust, you need to go ahead and crimp it. Now what that is just simply pinching the edges that's hanging up here into a kind of pattern. So you'll need your fingers, so you need 2 on the inside and 1 on the outside. And as you do this, just rotate. Just try and make it as neat and pretty as you can. Kind of pinching, see what I'm doing? I rotate, I pinch, rotate and pinch. Try and make the edges as crisp as you can get them. Rotate and crimp. And you're going to continue doing this until the whole pie crust is nicely crimped. Some people prefer using a fork. It's whatever rocks your boat, basically. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier you could use store-bought pie crust, or you can make it yourself at home. One of these days I have an excellent pie crust recipe that I use all the time, and I'm going to use that. I'll show you how to make it. It's very, very, very simple. Alright, now if you take a look, this is what it should look like. You see that? It's all the way around crimped. And what we're going to do, I'm going to set this aside and we're going to start making whatever goes inside. First I'm going to crumble the turkey sausage crumble. As you can see, that's fully cooked. If you'd rather use bacon or ham, make sure you cook it first before you put it into the bottom of the crust. And I'm just going to make sure your hands are clean. Always make sure your hands are clean. I'm just going to sprinkle at the bottom. Put that down there. Just spread it liberally. Make sure you put enough in there. I'm not big on bacon, that's why I'd rather use sausage, turkey sausage. You can use any kind of breakfast meat, because this is essentially a brunch dish, so you want to use a breakfast kind of meat. Alright, I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to put some cheese. Now we're going to put some cheese at the bottom here with the turkey sausage, and then we're going to put these other things in there, and then we're going to follow it up after we put the custard or the egg and heavy cream mixture. We're going to put some more cheese at the top. So make sure you leave some for the top. Any kind of white cheese would work, but I prefer either Swiss or Gruyere cheese. Now this is a recipe that was given to me by my mother-in-law, Anitra, and I'm lucky enough to have two mothers-in-law. How lucky am I? So this is Anitra's recipe, and I am sharing it with you. Okay, just kind of spread it nice and neat in there. And I reserve some to put on the end. And then I'm gonna sprinkle some of these basil leaves in there. You don't have to use a whole pack, but whatever you like, however much you like. Remember I mentioned you could use broccoli, you could use spinach, whatever you like. I prefer basil because of the flavor. I love the flavor of basil in this quiche. Okay. And then I also have here, I forgot to mention, I have one medium onion that I finally went ahead and chopped. I use a mandolin to make it the slices really thin. And then I went ahead using some butter, like 3 tablespoons. I went ahead and kind of cooked them down, you know. We don't want them to burn. You just want them lightly cooked. And again, it might require the use of your hands just to spread them around evenly. I know it's a mess, but it's all good. Trust me, it's all good. You'll see what I mean once it's all finished. I'm going to quickly wipe my hands here. And then I'm going to kind of put the peppers down here. I'm going to kind of do this in a pattern because not only do I like food that tastes good, I like it to look good too. And sometimes when you cook the quiche, whatever you put in there rises up to the top. So for the sake of presentation, I'm going to try and make it look really pretty. I'm trying to alternate the colors. But if you want to dump it in there, that's fine. If you want to dice them fine, nice and fine, that's also whatever works for you. It's just your imagination is what limits you in this dish. Just be as creative and as artsy as you like. Okay. Let's put one more yellow one in between those two. See that? Okay, I'll use it for something else. I'll use it for dinner tonight. Okay, so now I'm going to set this aside. We have the base down there, down in the pan. I am going to take my eggs. Here I have 5 eggs, and I'm going to add, I'm going to clean up later. Never mind the mess. I'm going to add the heavy whipping cream in here, okay? And you just want to beat it. Make sure you use large eggs if you can find them. I'm going to use about 1.5 cups to 2 cups. Oh, let me use that first here. And I don't want the quiche the pie plate to flood. So I'm just going to, actually I'll put the whole thing in there. I'll just pour some of it in there. If it looks like it's too full, I'm going to stop pouring it into the quiche. I'm going to mix it good. Alright, and around a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I use kosher salt when I cook. And around a 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper. Okay. And around a 1/4 teaspoon of, or 1/2 teaspoon of sugar, just to balance the flavors. I know a lot of times when I make something sweet, I make sure to add some salt in there, and sometimes when I cook something savory, I put a little bit of sugar just to balance that flavor. So where you take a bite and you get that sweet taste, and you're like, I wonder what that is, and that a lot of times is sugar. So see, that's nice and creamy and very well combined. I'm going to move my pie plate back here, and then I'm going to pour that in there. And then what we're going to do, once we pour everything in here, or most of it in here, to where it does not flood, I'm going to take aluminum foil and lightly cover the top. I wouldn't squish it because I do not want to mess up the edges of the pie. And I also am doing that just so the edges do not burn before the quiche is all nice and ready for us. So I'm going to just pour that around in there. Be very careful not to get between the pie crust and the pie plate. And then when this is all done, remember my oven is preheating at 375 degrees. We're going to cook this for approximately 45 minutes, but you want to check and make sure it's nice and done. And it's done when the edges look nice and golden, and also when it's kind of a little wobbly in the middle, like not hard. You don't want it hard, okay? It's not supposed to be hard. And then we're going to sit on a baking sheet and put it in the middle rack of the oven. And when I say 375 degrees, I always mean Fahrenheit, because that's a kind of heating that we use in the US. So it's Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what it is in Celsius, okay? Just keep pouring it in there. And I'm checking, I'm doing this and also checking, make sure it does not flood. I think I'll stop. Now, alright, I'm going to stop there. So we're not losing too much. That's not too much left in there. I'm going to sit this on a baking sheet that I have sitting back there, and I'm going to put it in the oven. It's already preheating, 375 degrees, and then when we come back, I will show you how to make the apple turnovers as this bakes, okay? We'll see you in a little bit. Welcome back. Our quiche is in the oven cooking, and I have gone ahead and set up to make our apple turnovers. Now, just to let you know, you can make any other kind of turnovers. You can use cherries, you can use peaches. I've seen those before. Today I'm going to be making apple turnovers. Now what you'll need is a sheet of puff pastry, and this is what puff pastry is. It's already pre-made for you. All you have to do is get it out of the freezer, and you can either let it sit in the refrigerator for a little bit before you're ready, and then right before you start using it, let it sit out on the counter for 15 to 20 minutes. Please do not let it sit out longer, because it gets very soft and hard to manage. So what I did, I let it sit out for 15 minutes, and I have it over here unfolded, because it normally comes with 2 cuts, like divided into 3 sections. So 2 cuts on either side of the sheet of puff pastry. Now what I did is lightly flour my surface, and I went ahead and used my rolling pin to kind of seal the scores. It's normally scored in 2 sections, so I went ahead and rolled it out, and you can see, you can tell where it was scored. It was kind of folded in on itself. So I went ahead and rolled it out. And you'll also need a pastry brush, you'll need a pizza cutter, you'll need a fork, you'll need a little bit of sugar for sprinkling over top, and over here I have some egg wash. It's just an egg, 1 whole egg, and a tablespoon of water. Okay, and you'll also need the apples or whatever fruit you decide to use to make the turnovers. Now if you walk on over here, I'll show you what it is I have on the stove. I have 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I have 3 apples that I went ahead and peeled. I cored, like I took out the middle hard part, and I went ahead and cubed. And what I did is I grated the zest of the lemon, a whole lemon, just to give it that nice flavor. I normally put that in my apple pie. And I also squeeze out the juice of 1 lemon, and that's to stop the apples from browning before your butter is ready. So I put that in the pot here on medium heat, and it's been cooking. And what I'm trying to do is, if you come and walk on over here, I'll show you what size it should be. Alright, now this is about the size you want the apples to be. You see? little bite-sized pieces. Now over here I had already butter and it's been cooking for a little bit, like 8 minutes. Some butter, unsalted butter, and the apples, of course. Now I'm going to add the sugar, okay? To reach a stage, you want to check and see that your apples are soft but not breaking apart, and you add the sugar. Gently stir it. See, I'm using a rubber spatula and I'm just kind of churning it over. And I'm going to put the exact same things I put when I'm cooking my apple pie. See that? Just coat it with the brown sugar. And for the exact measurements, everything is going to be listed on my blog. It's www.stellasmeza.blogspot.com. Now I'm adding a pinch of salt. Like I say, I always balance my flavors. I put a little bit of sweet and a little bit of salt. Now this is cardamom powder. I always put that in my whenever I'm making my apple pie, and I just kind of stir it. Now I use Granny Smith apples. You can use Granny Smith or any other combination of Granny Smith and a sweet apple. You can use Gala apples just to give it, because Granny Smith has that tart flavor, but they're excellent for cooking because they hold their shape and they have that pectin that gives a nice, like, doesn't make the apple pie runny. So that's why I use Granny Smith. And then I'm going to add a little bit of cinnamon in there. About half a teaspoon. Add a little bit more, just for good measure, for that extra flavor. Make sure not to put too much or it's going to be tart. Okay? And I also put vanilla, pure vanilla extract in my apple pie, so I'm going to add that in here as well. It's kind of like a small apple pie, but instead of pie crust, it has puff pastry, which is nice and flaky. So as it cooks, that butter that's inside the crust, it just evaporates and it becomes nice and flaky. Okay. So I'm going to add about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and this is pure vanilla extract. You use the good stuff, not imitation. The flavor is never the same. I know that a lot of people will disagree, but I'm telling you, the flavor is not the same if you use fake stuff. See that? I wish you could smell it. It smells so good. Right, and then just to thicken it up a little, I'm going to add a little bit of all-purpose flour, okay? Just so that the filling is not runny. Okay, I'm going to start with that. I'm going to give it a good stir until I see it's reach a consistency I want. I do not want it runny at all. And again, remember to be gentle. You don't want to break up the pieces. Oh, the smell. Ooh, smells so good. Add a little bit more. Right around 2 teaspoonfuls of all-purpose flour. And if you notice it's still runny, add a little bit more till it gets to the consistency that it is not runny. Because when you bake the turnovers and it's runny, it's going to sip through the ham. And it's going to make a mess all over your baking sheet. Alright, I'm going to stop at that. I'm going to turn that heat up a little bit. And I'm going to let it cook for like 3 minutes. And then when I come back, it'll be time to fill our puff pastry. So we're going to move back to the station with the puff pastry and we'll be right back. We're back. Right before the break, we were cooking down our apples, our Granny Smith apples, and I added the brown sugar in there, and I added the cardamom, cinnamon, and vanilla. And now it's good and ready. What I did, the reason why I took a break is I wanted it to cool down before I put it on the puff pastry. Otherwise, it's going to make it all mushy and melt, because puff pastry has a high butter content. You don't want to put anything hot on it directly unless it's in the oven. Alright, and you also saw me roll out the puff pastry sheet that we had. I just went ahead and elongated it. And I want you to come down here and take a look at what I did. What I did is I used my pizza cutter to cut it into quarters. As you can see, so there's going to be 1 apple turnover, 2, 3, 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our filling and set it right in the middle of the puff pastry square, and then we're going to fold it over. But before we fold it over, we're going to put some egg wash just around the edges, just to give it a good base to seal on. And then we're going to use our fork to crimp the edges, okay? So this is what we're doing. Just a tablespoonful You see that? I'm going to do that for all 4. And I have 2 sheets of puff pastry. So in case it's leftover apple filling, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to use the other sheet and do the same thing I'm doing here. That way we'll have 8 apple turnovers. Now this is a favorite in my family, so that will not be a problem at all. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to do 2. It might get messy, but do not panic. It's all going to go to the same place. I'm going to use my, right here is egg wash. It's 1 whole egg with a tablespoonful of water that I went ahead and beat together. And I'm just going to kind of apply this on the edges. That way it seals in on itself without coming apart when it's baking. And then another thing that we must not forget to do is once you folded this over, you should go ahead and cut a slit over top of the puff pastry just to allow the moisture to escape as you bake the apple turnovers, or it's going to get soggy. All that moisture is going to be trapped in there. That's going to make the puff pastry soggy, and you do not want that. See what I'm doing? Just getting the edges good. Do that, and then we're going to brush this over top, the leftover egg wash. We're going to brush it over top of the puff pastry. We're going to sprinkle it with a little bit of sugar, just regular granulated sugar, to give it a nice crunch. The egg wash, when you put it over top of the puff pastry, it's going to make it nice and golden, a little bit on the shiny side. Now look what I did. I put the filling right in the center of that puff pastry sheet, and I'm going to fold it over, trying to form a triangle, as close to a triangle as you can get. And it'll all depend on how perfect of a square you cut when you were dividing that puff pastry, okay? So I'm just going to use my fingers to kind of slightly distribute that filling in there and also to seal the edges. Then I'll go over that with a fork again. I'm going to do the same over here. See that? Try to get the corners to match. And if you have to gently pull, anything you have to do, but try and do it as neat as you can, just to make those edges meet together. See that? And I'm patting that down a little bit. And I'll do that here as well. And don't be surprised if you see a little visitor walk into the shot. That's my 2-year-old son. He's been trying to get in here ever since I started recording this video, so don't be surprised if you see him in here. Okay. Try your best to have the edges line up flush, like even, so nothing's hanging over the other part. And just give it a gentle pat. Okay, so now I'm going to use my fork to crimp the edges. That's just going to ensure that they do not come apart, the edges don't come apart as you bake it. And this is going to puff up nice and big, so make sure when you put them on the baking sheet, which I have here lined up with some silicone lining, or you can use parchment paper to line your baking sheet. That way, in the event that some of that filling does spill out, it does not ruin your baking sheet. So just make sure you line it with whatever, either silk pad or parchment paper. Just make sure you don't go all the way through to tear it. Okay, so there you have it. That's the step 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lightly brush just the top of the puff pastry with that egg wash. See that? Try to get the edges too. Not too much now. Try and get as neat as you can. There you go. The last one. And this one I forgot to crimp, and I'll do that right now. It takes just a minute, so. I'm going to make sure nothing spills out as I bake. You know what? Here it is. Here's what I use. And you might want to work fast because as you see here, my fork's sticking to that puff pastry. If you run into that problem, you can dip your fork in a little bit of flour, in a bowl with a little bit of flour, just so it does not stick to puff pastry as you do this. Okay? So I'm going to transfer them using the stirrer to lift them up, that way it does not stretch out, and put them on the baking sheet. I'm going to move this aside. And remember, the surface is supposed to be floured, or it will stick. You do not want it to stick. And you can do what I'm doing, use a turner to aid you in this process. This one does not want to lift, but I'll make it work. There you go. Let me show you the next step real quick so I can throw these babies in the oven. I'm going to do the rest. But this is what I do. I make a slit right in the center to give that moisture a place to escape from. And I'm going to finish doing that with these, and I'm going to put them in here. Remember, your oven, at this point, at the time you're filling it in and everything, your oven should be preheated. I'm going to bake these at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. And you want to make sure, keep a close eye on them so they do not get too brown, okay? You don't want them to burn. You want them to look nice and golden brown. And then I'm going to sprinkle some sugar up over these before I put them in the oven. So we'll see you back in a little bit when everything's done. Our quiche is nice and cooled, and it's nice and cooling. And our puff pastry is going to be done. Our apple turnovers are going to be done. So join us back in a little bit. Welcome back. Our brunch is good and ready, and I went ahead and served myself up some helpings. And I'm going to show you here what we have is our quiche. If you come down here, take a look. You see the eggs and the cream in there all set up, and you see the that's nice. You hear that? That's how it's supposed to be, the crust, and you see the peppers in there. And I went ahead and added the chives to the top. I realized I forgot to add that while I was still showing you before I took a break, before I put it in the oven. I added the chives on top, and I added extra Swiss cheese on the top. So I'm just going to go ahead and dig in there. And you see the sausages in there. Oh, smells incredible. Take a piece of pepper. Oh, that is tasty. The texture is perfect. It's nice and fluffy, and you get that sweetness from the peppers, and of course there's a savory from the sausage in there. That is excellent. I'm going to finish that later. Right here, that's that apple turnover. You see how I didn't let it brown too much. 12 to 15 minutes tops, and it's still, listen. You hear that? It's supposed to be like, it's not supposed to be mushy. It's supposed to have that, I'm going to cut, listen to this. Listen to that. That's the sound of flavor, people. Goodness. It's going to be a mess because it's flaky. It's going to come apart a little. See the apples in there? Apple filling I put in there. I'm going to take a nice bite right here where there's apples. So good. I want to let it cool down first. It smells too good. I couldn't help myself. That is excellent. It has that crunch from the sugar that we add over the top. It's flaky because of the butter that's in the puff pastry, and the sweetness of the apples and the spices that we put in there, and the brown sugar comes through. So perfect. I'm happy. It's Mother's Day today, and my husband asked me, what do you want for breakfast? And I said, you know what? How about I make something that I like? And I love this. I love this. I love having this for brunch. So we have quiche, and we have apple turnovers, and I'm a happy girl. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And I want you to know that you're loved and appreciated, and would be even more appreciated if you got in that kitchen and cooked your family something good. So I hope I get to see you next time and take your taste on another culinary safari. Thank you for joining me, and have a blessed day. Yeah, 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 yeah.